All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. We are very happy to talk with you today about the new Rural Community Immigration Pilot, the RCIP program, and changes to the Ontario's Provincial Nominee Program, the OINP. So I am Elizabeth Lawn. I think most of you probably have probably seen me as my clients before or also on webinars. And Zia is here as well. She's another lawyer at our firm, and she has probably worked with many of you as well. All right, let's get started. Like I said, today we're talking about the RCIP program. This is a brand new program that has just been started. And it was announced last year, and the federal government came up with their rules a few months ago. But each of the communities, just recently in the last month or two, have now come up with the programs. So what these programs are is that there's 14 communities all across Canada. Many of them are in Northern Ontario, and they have to sign up to be participating in this pilot program. So you have to go to these communities first, okay? Currently, because these programs have just started, if you qualify, you can get your job offer in. Currently, it seems like the selection percentage is quite high. So if you're interested in this program and you have that opportunity, I would submit your application rather fast. Okay. Um, Also, there is a very, very low requirement on age, on language, not age, language. There's no requirement on age, on language. So basically, for, I mean, it just depends on the tier, the knock tier. But if you are, for example, going to university or a college here, you should have no problems passing the the requirement on language. There's no competition on language. Okay. The processing time, this is just my estimate, but probably you're looking at around 1 year. Again, when the programs start and the inventory has not built up yet, usually the processing time is a lot faster than if there's a lot of inventory in and there's a backlog, etc., then it gets slower. So our estimate at this time is probably approximately 1 year, if not less. You can also get an employer-specific work permit while you are waiting for your permanent residence. Okay, so for a lot of you whose work permits might be expiring in the next year or so, this might be a very good way for you to continue to remain in Canada while waiting for your permanent residence. And spousal work permits are also available as well as dependent work permits as well, dependent children work permits. And if you are lucky enough to have studied in a master's or 2 year program that's not a master's in one of these communities, you do get an advantage in that you don't have to have any sort of work experience in order to qualify. All right, so let's take a look at how this process works.
Perfect. Yeah, let's talk about the RCIP process. So when you're looking at the RCIP program, the first step is that the employer has to be designated. Okay, so the employer has to apply to the community first in order to receive the designation before they can proceed any further. Elizabeth will talk a little bit about what the requirements are, what the qualifications are for the employer, but just talking about the process first. The first application is the employers, and they're applying for designation. In order to do this, they do have to show that they have a job offer in one of the 25 priority occupations. So each community that's a part of the RCIP program has identified their own 25 occupations, and these occupations will be reviewed yearly. So right now, I believe now all the communities have released their occupations list, And so for the employer to apply for their designation, they have to show that they do have a job offer in one of those occupations. When an employer receives their designation, they're designated for life, unless there's some particular reason, for example, violation, that they're then removed from the list. But otherwise, they are a designated employer. Once the employer has received their designation, then the employer can submit an application on behalf of the employee, the applicant, for community selection. Okay, so the RCIP program as a whole is a very employer-driven process. Employer goes through the designation process, and then they are the ones that submit the recommendation application to the community, for the community to then provide the recommendation so that the applicant can submit their PR application. Now, when you're going through the RCIP process, you want to look at the specific criteria of the community that you're applying to, because every community is different in terms of their specific timing. So there's going to be intake periods, and so you want to be sure that you know exactly when the intake period is for your community. During that intake period is generally when they'll accept applications, then they'll go through it and do their assessments. Once you receive your community recommendation, that's when you as the applicant can submit your PR application to IRCC. At that point in time, you can also apply for a work permit and the spousal work permit, like Elizabeth was talking about, so that you're able to continue working in Canada while you're waiting for your PR process.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the requirements for the employer. First of course, the employer has to be located within the RCIP boundary. So there is a specific map that is there for every community because, for example, what's in the Sudbury? There are certain boundaries for that, okay? And so you have to make sure that that employer is located within those boundaries. There are other criteria regarding the business that is specified by the community. For example, it could be how many years are they operating within the community? If they haven't operated that many years, are there ways to show that might still qualify? Maybe they had made an investment in their business, etc. Okay, so make sure every community has their own standards. So when we have someone who wants to come to us, we take a look at whether the employer can qualify, first of all, okay? And of course, the job offer has to be in one of those 25 priority occupations. So right now, IRCC is saying to the employers, you can't become designated unless you have a job offer, someone who for one of the 25 priority occupations. If you don't have anyone identified in your mind as to who is going to apply, right now they're saying we're not really looking at you guys for designation. But once they have been designated as an employer, you won't have to go through that step anymore. So in the future times, let's say the first application they did was for a cook, for example, and that was on the priority occupations. But the subsequent applications, later on, cook was taken off the list. But since the designation is for life, that employer remains designated. And if later on they want to submit an application for someone else in another priority occupation, they can still do so. Okay. One last one, and this is an easy one for them to do. It probably takes half an hour to do. There is some online training that they have to do, and normally the community, when they're going through the employer designation situation, sends them that online training, and they just do it online.
Okay, let's talk about the qualifications for the employee, for the applicant. So the first thing is that you need to have either 1 year of related work experience or you've completed an eligible program within the community. So when we talk about related work experience, we're looking at the skill level of the job offer that's being used for the RCIP program. And based on that tier, you're looking at what tiers are eligible in terms of your work experience. So it's quite broad. So for someone who has, let's say, a tier 1 job offer, you would need work experience in either tiers 0, 1, 2, or 3. So quite a bit of range as to what's considered related or eligible for the work experience requirement. The alternative, and this is great for international students, if you have completed an eligible program within the community, and when we talk about eligible programs, we're talking about either a program that's at least 2 years in length or a master's or a higher program. Now, your program does have to have been completed within 18 months of when you're submitting your application, and you had to have been a full-time student throughout the program. In terms of there's also a residence requirement to it. So if you've done a 2-year program, then you needed to have been in the community for at least 16 months within the last 2 years of your program. If your program was less than 2 years in length, then you needed to be in that same community throughout the entire program. Okay, so we're talking about where you've resided. There's also, if you did a distance program or if there was a ESL component to your program, that couldn't have been more than half the program. And you can't have received a scholarship or fellowship that requires you to return to your home country.
Does the
So go
sorry.
ahead.
Uh, I was just going to say maybe we could run through some
For
scenarios.
sure.
Okay, so let's say someone has not gone to school in that community. They don't have any work experience in the community, but they do, let's say they have a job as a cook, which is one, and it's one of the priority occupations
Yeah.
that community, okay? They don't have any work experience as a cook, but they do have some work experience as a retail sales manager, and they were
Okay.
employed for over a year in India.
Okay.
Okay, does that qualify for the work experience? I think those.
Yeah. So the work experience doesn't have to be in Canada. Okay.
Mhm,
Work experience can be anywhere.
mhm,
The tier for a cook is a tier 3,
mhm,
right? So what that means is we can use work experience. It doesn't have to be in the exact same knock code, right?
mhm.
So what we're looking at is the tier level of the experience to make sure that it qualifies.
Okay. Of course, we do have to look at when this work experience was obtained. How many years does it was it 3 years within the last 3 years or
Yeah, within the last 3 years.
last 3 years? And it
Mhm.
also can't be self-employed work. It has
Correct.
paid work as well and full-time as well. Okay.
Yeah. So for your example, because cook is a tier 3 knock, you would be, so your job offers a tier 3, your work experience can be in any tier 2, 3, or 4.
Perfect. Okay.
So going back to the requirements here, so like you were saying earlier, Elizabeth, the language requirements for the RCIP program are quite low in terms of for language, it just depends on your job offer. So again, if we're looking at the tiers, that will identify what the exact language requirement is. So for a tier 0 or 1, that's where you have the highest language of CLB 6. At tiers 2 or 3, it goes down to CLB 5, and then a tier 4 or 5 job offer, you only have a CLB 4 requirement. So going back to your cook example, the CLB requirement would be 5. Okay. Education, only high school education can be completed either inside or outside of Canada. If it's outside, then an education assessment would be required. With regards to settlement funds, if you're already working in Canada, so let's say you're here on a post-grad work permit, then there is no settlement funds requirement because you already are here, you have the ability to work. Now, as we were talking about earlier, when you're when we look at the process of applying, the employer is the one that submits the application to the community. And when a community is reviewing the application, they have a scoring grid that they use. So you do have to meet a minimum score in order to be considered. And what most communities are doing is looking at it and saying, okay, well, we're going to set a threshold minimum score for each round that they do. Okay. And so when they do their reviews, they'll look at the scores in using their scoring grids, and then they'll decide who to send out those recommendations to. It's also important to keep in mind that there are maximums, so there are quotas in terms of how many recommendations a community can provide. And so each community is a little different. Some communities have identified and said that for certain occupations, we're only going to provide this many recommendations in a calendar year or in each intake period. So really important to go back, look at the community specifically that you're applying through and be familiar with what their criteria is for the programs, any quotas that they do have.
Yes. So, the RCIP, I think, is a very exciting program to those
Mhm.
who are willing to relocate and you have found a job in one of the priority occupations, and you could possibly apply for permanent residence this way. Because this year, the government has drastically reduced the numbers for permanent residents. Including express entry. You guys probably would have seen how high the points are. They're gradually, I'm hopeful that they're gradually coming down a little bit, but still they're extraordinarily high. And also, what we're going to talk about now are the changes to the provincial nominee programs, because the provincial nomination quotas have been cut by half for almost all provinces. And so, if last year, I think our amount was 10,750 times two. This is the amount that we currently have right now for this year. The government really didn't select at all, have any draws at all, very much for the first half of the year. They have started now doing some draws, and right now I counted for their numbers. It's 3,750, no, it's 3,795 invitations. But remember, there were quite a lot of people who were invited to apply and submitted their applications that are still in the waiting to be processed. So part of the 10,750 spots would be to process those applications that were invited last year as well. Now, disturbingly, the government is about to pass a bill that allows the province now to return the applications that have been submitted, but have not received the provincial nomination. So if you already have received a provincial nomination, you're safe. But if you were invited to apply last year and you submitted your application and you haven't had your application decided, there is a possibility that the government might return your applications just because they're saying it's not, we no longer feel like this occupation is priority, or something like that. We're hoping, just because the bill has been passed doesn't mean that the government is going to action it. And we are hoping very much that the government will be judicious in doing this, because certainly that would be very devastating to many people. But that is there now on the table. We've also heard that the entrepreneur program is not very likely to return in the near future.
Yeah, there have also been some big procedural changes in how the OINP operates for their employer job offer streams. So as of July 2nd, there's now a new employer portal. And so employers have to actually create an account, register themselves first. And it's through this employer portal that all of the company and job offer information is being submitted. by the employers themselves. And so now the job offer actually has to be submitted and started by the employer before the employee, the applicant, can actually submit their expression of interest. So you can't go into the OINP pools for the job offer streams without having the employer first create that job offer in their employer portal. So a big change to how the process is of going through these job offer streams.
And I just like to say, you know, this employer portal, I think sometimes people say, oh, it's a pain in the neck, but I think it does have some advantages. First of all, many employers in the past were reluctant to provide information to their employees about their their financials, you know, other how many people they are employing, etc. This way, everything is kept private for the employer to submit on their own. And, you know, as lawyers, we can represent them, we can represent you, but none of this information will ever uh, go to you unless the employer, of course, sends it to you to see. Okay. Um, this is also very important for you to speak with the employer. We have always advised you guys to speak with the employer, and for us to be able to also speak with the employer to advise them on what the situation is. We have seen other people who did not ask their employers, and then when they get that invitation to apply, they all of a sudden tell their employers, "Oh, you have 14 days to submit," and it creates a very bad relationship for many times. So this way, the government is ensuring that you inform the employer. The employer is fully aware of what they have to do, fully aware of the program, and they themselves then actively go in and create their portal and their part of the application before you can even create the profile.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very important point to note there is that, I think there is some benefit certainly to this change. With OINP, the other thing I wanted to talk about just quickly is that there is a regional emphasis that we're seeing from the OINP program in terms of how they're doing their draws, who they're targeting, and who's really going through this process. So READY, it actually stands for the Regional Economic Development Through Immigration. It's a pilot that OINP has started this year. It's active until the end of this year, so till December 31st of the year. The pilot, it works with the existing employer job offer streams. And what OINP has done has actually allocated 200 of their nomination spaces for their job offer streams for the four communities that are part of the READY pilot. So those are the Lanark County, Leeds and Grenville, Sarnia, and Thunder Bay. And essentially, the nominations are reserved specifically for applicants with job offers in one of the four pilot communities. So if an applicant qualifies for the OINP job offer streams, if their full-time job offer is in one of the pilot communities, then they can qualify for the pilot. There's really no additional criteria or separate application process for the pilot. You're doing the exact same thing. You're going into the same EOI pool. But when OINP does draws, they're doing draws specific for the READY pilot. They're also, and we saw this back last month in June, OINP is able to do other targeted draws as well. And so what we saw in June is that they did targeted draws for individuals in Northern Ontario and Eastern Ontario. So we can see where there's a bit of an emphasis coming out this year. The other area that Ontario has been targeting is healthcare occupations. And so within healthcare occupations, Ontario actually made a change to the employer job offer stream for foreign workers, which will allow physicians to qualify for the stream without needing a job offer from an Ontario employer. So this is specifically for self-employed physicians. They don't need a separate job. They can still be self-employed as long as they are billing OHIP. Before they were ineligible to apply, but now with this particular change, they can qualify for the foreign worker stream. And then what we've also seen is Ontario has been doing healthcare draws, so targeting other types of healthcare workers, including like nurses, nurse aides, home support workers have all been part of the targeted draws for healthcare occupations.
So, these programs really emphasize the direction that the government is going with regard to regionalization, where you are finding your work. They kind of want to encourage people to move out of the major cities as well. But I think also the different occupations, priority occupations. Now, whether or not you qualify for this, it doesn't mean that there is no hope, right? If you don't qualify for these programs, we're happy to speak with you. Come as early as possible. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I'll only do it after I qualify," but sometimes maybe you might not know what you can qualify for, and we can certainly give you ideas about what you need to do. So, for example, someone who comes to me before they even go to a university or college, that's great because then we can advise them on what is the best places to go to in order to qualify for some of these programs. So come as early, even if you don't qualify, do come for a consultation and let us know that you've attended our webinar so that we can give you a discounted rate. Okay. All right. So we are going to go through some of the questions. Wow, we have 30 questions that you have posed. Thank you guys so much. And we're going to go through as many as we possibly can. So here goes. But, we also, by the way, do a lot of social media. We do a lot of videos on social media telling you guys about different kinds of aspects of immigration law, some of the things that you might not know, and some of the new things that are coming up. We just recently did a video on RCIP, so do if you this is an area that is of interest to you, please do follow up. This is our social media links.
Elizabeth, before we get into the questions, I'm seeing a lot of questions here about how do we schedule a consult and what do we need to do to schedule this consult. Can you just go over that again?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would suggest that you guys do is email us at increase@lmlawgroup.com and let us know that you'd like to book a consultation and that you came to this webinar, and that then we can book you in. Otherwise, you can also trial us on our telephone. Oops, what happened? On our telephone as well, and give us a call and say you'd like to book a consult. All right. Shall we get started with the questions?
I'll start with an easy one. Is North Bay part of the RCIP program? Yes, it is part of RCIP.
Okay, great. Okay, so next one. The person has a question. What would be the best way to go about exploring these RCIP programs? Is it better to go first to the participating cities and seek out employment once there, or find one first online, secure a job first before going there physically? Hope you can provide as many details as you can. This is all about hunting for that job. I think a lot of times, if you are studying there and you are living in that community, a lot of these communities, it's about who you know, right? If they know that you're there, then you might be able to find a job more easily there. But oftentimes, especially with the priority occupations, they're going to be trying to find these jobs online. And there's not just one community, there's 14 communities. So if you are able to find these offers online, apply, and also during the interview, you might want to see if they might be interested in supporting you with regard to the RCIP program. Because remember, these RCIP programs are all about the employers. You can't just apply without the employer supporting you. Okay. Oftentimes, we are asked to explain what the programs are to the employers. Sometimes they might get scared if they don't know about the immigration system. They don't know what they're liable for. They don't. So we're there to help explain it to them, explain how easy it is for them to, do it, help them through the process and to make it all very smooth and easy for the employer so that they are going to be willing to help you out.
Okay, the next question here is, do you get implied status after filing an RCIP application? So when we're talking about the process of applying for RCIP, right, we said the employer has to get designated first. Then once they're designated, the employer submits the recommendation application for the employee. All of that does not give any sort of implied status to the applicant, okay? Once the applicant gets the community recommendation, they can use that community recommendation to apply for permanent residence. Again, no implied status at that point in time because it's a PR application. With the community recommendation, you can also use that to apply for a work permit or work permit extension here in Canada. It's only at that work permit extension application that you would then get implied status. This is also assuming that the work permit extension application is submitted prior to the expiry date of your current work permit, right? That's the only point in time that you would get implied status through this RCIP process.
So if timing is of issue to you guys, your work permits are going to expire, no time to waste.
Mhm.
Certainly, we're happy to have a meeting with you, go through the process, and go through a timeline with you.
Yeah, and this goes back to what you said earlier, Elizabeth, about, starting early, starting to think about processes and options and that best route and alternative routes, right? Because backup plans are certainly important too, as early as possible.
Absolutely. Someone is asking about Afghans who were deported from Pakistan to Afghanistan by the governments to qualify. This program is not. These programs are very different from this program. There is an program for refugees who are outside of the country through the OINP if they have job offers. If you're interested in speaking to that, we can certainly meet with you and go over some of those questions there.
The next question is, I've been invited to apply for OINP in June. Application's been submitted, waiting for approval. How long does it take to get OINP approval? And this individual is concerned about work permit expiring in December. In terms of processing times, it does depend on the exact, oh, this is the international student stream. Okay, so processing times for the OINP program do vary. The average times have not been updated by OINP in the last year. So it's very difficult to give an average. I think we're seeing some applications come back quickly, others take a very long time. And then, of course, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, OINP now has the ability to return applications as well. So that's obviously could be potential for problems as well going forward. Um, with work permits, what I would recommend, if you do have a work permit that's expiring soon, it would be important to sit down, schedule a consultation appointment so we can go through your background and see what your options are specifically for extending your work permit so you're able to continue working in Canada while you're waiting to go through the PR process.
And this person is also very lucky. They also have a job offer in North Bay for their RCIP, and they're just wondering what your options are. Look, you're very lucky to have two options there. But what I would say is come and talk to us because you're probably giving up one for the other, and you need to know what your risks are for either one. Yeah. Okay, so somebody's saying those with expiring postgrad work permits 2025, can they still apply for the RCIP? Yes, you can still apply for the RCIP if your work permit has not expired yet. Yes, time is tight, and yes, it is possible to extend your work permit in time. These days, I think the community-based ones, depending on which community, can be maybe a month or 2 months to obtain, and then you apply for your permanent residence, and then with that, it's possibility to apply for your work permit as well. So certainly there is time, not that much time, depending on when your work permit expires. Do come to us, and we can sort of look at a plan for you.
Okay, there's a question here. So the next question is about application costs. It does depend on your situation. What I would suggest is to start by scheduling a consultation appointment. During the consultation, we'll be able to go through your background and advise you of the options that are available to you. And of course, that's going to be different for every individual because, it does depend on your background, what you qualify for, and your situation particularly. So that would be the best starting point. And during the consultation, we'll be able to go through what that will look like in terms of costs as well.
Someone said that Moncton, New Brunswick is not one of these communities. What does this mean as getting RCIP qualification in that city? So there's no RCIP qualification if it's not one of the communities. Moncton would be eligible for the Atlantic Immigrant Nominee Program, and also there's provincial nominee programs in there. I believe the AIP is pretty much closed for the most part for many provinces. But we can certainly look at your other options with regard to permanent residence.
Then next question is about sole proprietorship businesses being eligible, or is it only limited businesses? Elizabeth, do you know?
It depends on the criteria for the community. Certainly, there are many sole proprietor businesses where they have established themselves and them could qualify. So come and talk to us, and we can figure this out. Is my co-op experience considered in the work experience? Yes, it could be considered in the work experience. Yeah.
The next question here is looking at the tier levels of I'm assuming here they mean for the program that they studied in. So the area, so if you're an international student who has studied and completed a program here in Canada, your area of education or your program of study here doesn't have to necessarily be related to the job offer that you have. There's no specific criteria that says that, if you're going to be relying on education instead of work experience, that it has to be in the same field as your job offer.
Uh, they want to see if the FSIP, I probably they mean if RCIP. RCIP is open
Francophone,
and all. Oh, the
the Francophone, yeah.
Francophone Museum. Do you know about that, Zia? If it's currently open or?
I know that I don't know if it's open in every single community already. I know that some do have it open. Like I know I was looking at Sudbury's the other day, that one's open for sure. Yeah, I would look at the community websites just to confirm that it is open. And again, it's similar in the sense of intake periods, looking at the specific criteria for the community and the process within that community.
Yeah.
This person's also asking about language, and yeah, for language, it is CLB 5 for the Francophone.
And if you have a job offer, even if you don't qualify yet for the Francophone, the FCIP, Community Immigrant Program, you can get a work permit, the Francophone work permit, if you just pass the
Mhm.
level 5 for speaking and listening with a job offer, and anywhere outside of Quebec. It could be in Toronto, it could be in Winnipeg, anywhere, okay?
That French definitely has a huge, huge benefit right now.
Huge. If you have French, come and speak to us. We'll figure out a way for you. Yeah.
Okay, the next question here is, can we make an EOI to OINP and also apply through RCIP? Yeah, there's nothing that limits you to applying only through one or creating an expression of interest in just one. You can definitely be applying for both at the same time.
Next one, do you know if there are plans to expand the RCIP locations to other small communities? Probably, but I think each community had a certain time period to apply to the federal government to be added, and I don't know if they're opening that up yet.
The next question here is, do you help with acquiring a job offer? No, we deal with the immigration. We're an immigration law firm, so we can assist you with any part of the immigration process, but we don't do the job offers.
this person was late a little bit and they have a question about the graduate master stream. They applied, haven't heard anything yet. Um, it's, if you have applied, you were selected. The problem is that there was a bill that's been passed, or has it been passed? I think it's already been
Mhm.
passed, right?
Yeah.
Where the government can now return applications. So fingers crossed your application won't be returned. But if I were you, I would also look at backup plans as well.
Have there been any changes to the PhD stream? No, nothing recently.
Where does the employer need to create the profile and what is expected of the employer to do? So there is a employer portal right now on the OINP website, and the employer will be expected to provide information. There used to be an employer form, and so a lot of the information that the employers were supposed to be putting on the form, almost all of it is going to be what they need to put on the employer portal. If you are selected, um, and you're invited to apply, then the employer would be submitting their documentation through their portal as well.
Are you able to work with us as the applicant and the employer when applying to OINP? Yes, we can certainly represent both you as the employee and the employer. We're happy to assist them with their process. But yeah, we can certainly help on both sides of the application.
Yes, as lawyers, we are bound by solicitor-client privilege, and that means not even the police, not even the court can order it. Well, unless we are ordered by to the court to, basically as an exception to the solicitor-client privilege, but for almost all situations, we're not allowed to reveal this information. So if the employer, we're representing the employer, we are not allowed to reveal their information to you. And this employer portal especially makes these things a lot easier for the employer to go through as well. So most of the time, it's recommended that a lawyer represent both you and the employer because we want the two sides to match. If the employer is saying that they want you to work in a certain area and this is the job offer, we want to make sure that when you say I'm going to have this work experience and etc., that it matches what exactly the employer is saying. It's not great to go in blind and for the lawyer not to know what is happening, what the employer is saying. And so in almost all cases, we try to be the representative for both the employer and you. Okay. In a lot of applications for jobs, employers include a question that are you likely to receive a visa or PR sponsorship now or in the future? Can you provide some guidance on how to respond? Typically, a job applicant is very desperate and doesn't want to disqualify his or her chances. And it's an interesting question. This is not something that is an immigration uh, question, but normally what we tend to do is we can provide applicants with a legal opinion on their chances for permanent residence. We can help applicants speak with employers who might have these kind of questions. And so, we speak a lot of, we have a lot of our clients are the companies who are employees, and they often come to us and say, "Hey, what do you think of the chances of us keeping them on a permanent basis?" So these are things that are, um, once you get that interview, that is certainly a concern for smart employers if they want to hire someone for the long term. Something that they would want to know. They should know what those chances are.
What is the English test requirements for the OINP program? OINP depends on the stream that you're applying through. OINP has many streams. If we're talking about the employer job offer streams, The foreign worker and the international student stream do not have language requirements. The in-demand skill stream does, it's CLB4. With that being said, the employer job offer streams all go through the expression of interest system. And so when you're creating an expression of interest and going into the pool, you do get points for language as well, right? So even if, for example, you're going through the foreign worker stream where there is no language requirement, your points are going to be affected by not having a language test in your profile. So two parts to keep in mind, the minimum criteria for being eligible, and then of course the EOI system and the points that you'll have in the pool.
This person wants to hear about insights about the master's graduate stream. I would say for that, in terms of the master's stream, we are seeing in the past that the draws have also had other factors included, like where you went to school. I mean, it's more than points. Sometimes they're looking at that. It could be that they're looking at whether or not you have job offers as well in demand occupations. Um, Certainly the numbers are very important as well as your score. But overall, whether or not you will be selected, that's a huge if these days when the Ontario has cut its numbers by half. So even if you qualify and are in the pool for the master's stream, if you're my client, I would certainly advise you to also have those plan Bs and plan Cs in your and to look at qualifying in other ways as well.
Can anyone who has a full-time permanent job but not on the priority list be allowed to apply for RCIP? The employer is already a designated organization. Unfortunately, no, the job offer that's being used for the RCIP program does need to be on the priority list for the community, but there may be other options available based on the knock of your job offer. What I'd recommend is, contact us, schedule a consult. We can go through your particular situation in your position and see what the other options are.
Is tourists allowed to apply? They're in Canada already? Yes. If you qualify, then yes, you can put your application in.
How much is it for a consultation? Consultations are, so when you're scheduling the consult, when you're emailing us, just let us know that you've attended this webinar, and you'll be eligible for the discount for being at this webinar, which is $100.
Yeah, so it's $100 plus tax. That's
Yes.
the rate. It's not a discounted $100
Sorry, yes.
plus tax. No, people always get this mistake. The total amount you pay is $113. If I'm already in the pool, can I apply to RCIP? If you're already in which pool? Express entry pool or OINP pool, whatever pool, yes, you can apply still for the RCIP.
Do you have any information about how long wait times are before they grant the community? Yes, I do. Um, with regards to, well, of course, it's going to depend on the community. Certainly, every community is going to be a little different. And again, like I mentioned earlier, pay attention to the intake period because you can only submit applications during intake. Um, every community is going to be different in terms of their processing time. The most recent one that we did, we got a decision, it was what, 3 weeks for the recommendation to be issued.
Yeah, a lot of times what happens is there's a community sort of decision-making committee in the community. They might meet once a month. And so if you're able to get selected during that time, then it could be very well just, the next meeting, they select you and then you go. Is my paid co-op experience considered in the work experience? Yes, it could be.
I recently started working in a skilled occupation in my career here in Canada. Can I apply for OINP using my skilled work experience from outside of Canada before getting one? So this, I mean, you may be able to. It really depends on what your work experience is, whether you meet other criteria for being eligible under OINP or one of the federal programs. what I would recommend, like I said earlier, is schedule a consultation so we can go through your background in particular and talk about the options that are available to you.
This person has a scenario where there's 2 years of work experience is not completed for the foreign worker stream and will be completed in August. Da, 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 da. Listen, too much. I can't answer your question right now. You need to come for a consultation, okay? And then we can go over your situation. Okay.
Do people who are out of status in Canada qualify? If you don't have status here, then it can pose a problem for the whole process. I think if you're out of status, contact us. Let us go through your background, your options, so we can really put together an immigration plan for you. Really important.
If you receive an ITA, but they don't nominate you before your work permit expires, do you lose the ITA and OINP returns? So if you're going to not have your work permit is going to expire soon, OINP does oftentimes recognize implied status. And they might still qualify if you have submitted your work permit. So certainly if your work permit is going to expire soon, you're getting into a very precarious time. Do contact us for a consultation so we can go over your options.
Does it cost the employer any money to submit an offer of employment through the employer portal? So I think they're talking about creating an employer portal and submitting a job offer. No, there's no
Oh.
cost to the employer.
For the RCIP, does the employee have to reside in the designated country? So the RS county. So the RCIP, the job off, it's about where the job offer is. As to whether or not the employee has to live. Usually these kind of jobs are jobs that are done in the community. So if you don't live in the community, how are you going to go and perform the jobs? That's something that I'm not certain about. Come and talk to us. We can certainly look at your options.
So the next question here is asking about for the international student streams, um, when they're trying to figure out the date that they're eligible until. So they have 2 years from when you complete your program. The date that OINP goes by is the date that's actually written on your credential itself. So if your degree says that your credential or your program was completed in, let's say, June 2023, then you'd have until June 2025 to submit your application. And that means not just creating an EOI, but getting the ITA and submitting the actual application to the province.
This person says, "Can you be in Toronto while applying for the rural program?" Here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to be even in the country when the employer is going to apply for you. Okay. But if you have an open work permit and you're not working in that job, that's going to be a question. Why aren't you working in the job? Okay, it's all a lot of it is a smell test. So certainly we can have a chat with you and talk about what the situation is and whether or not you might be able to qualify for the program.
What are all the cities that are in the RCIP program? IRCC has it on their website. There's 14 communities. They're all listed right on the first page of the RCIP program website. Specifically in Ontario, there's 5 cities. In Ontario, we have North Bay, Sudbury, Timmins, Thunder Bay, and Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, very good.
There we go.
Where do we find the list of available jobs for each region? You go on to the website, you type RCIP, and type your community like RCIP Sudbury, RCIP North Bay, and it'll show up on that website.
Next question is, if our job is full-time commission-based, can I still apply for the Francophone work permit? Yes, it would still be possible. I'd suggest contacting us so that we can go through the more specifics about the position to see if it's eligible and you can go through the program.
Uh, so basically, someone wants to do a caregiver program. This one, it's not, well, you'll have to have a consultation with us about a caregiver program. Okay. I think we discussed that one
Yeah,
or
we've done this one. The next, I'm just gonna, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna go through these quickly here. Um, so there's a question here about the employer portal. The employer portal. Can we create the employer's profile on behalf of OINP, or do they have to do it themselves? OINP is very particular. The employer portal has to be created by a signatory of the company. So a representative would not be able to create the initial portal for the employer. The employer also has to start the job offer. So they have to register the job offer in the employer portal. Once it's been registered, then they can authorize a representative to then submit, so they can go through the rest of the process to finalize and submit the job offer on the portal for on behalf of the employer. But the initial portal does have to be created by the employer themselves.
someone is here, first language is French, working as a carpenter, etc. You probably have very good options. Do come and talk to us. I think we have 3 minutes left. Let's maybe pick two. What you pick one and I pick one. Uh, question left.
Okay, let's see here. Here's an interesting, what if someone has two one-year programs in the community? Can they use those two programs together to be eligible for the education instead of having to have the work experience requirement um, for the RCIP? No, when you look at the criteria, it's specifically saying it's one credential that's either 2 years or longer, or you've done a master's degree or higher that took less than 2 years. So it's specific to that one credential.
Someone has asked, can they reach out to us for a consultation, not about the RCIP, but for other pathways and still be eligible for the discounted price? Yes. All you need to say is, I came to your webinar, and we don't check and we don't care. You just come and you just come. If you've seen this, you know that we know that you've come to the webinar, and yeah, just come. I just want to talk with you and give you your options. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for showing up and giving us your fantastic questions. These days, it is very difficult these days to get permanent residence for sure. And sometimes it's just about finding those different things that most people don't really think about that could give you that edge. So we're happy to have this opportunity to tell you some of those things, and hope to see you guys sometime and help you along your journey. All right, take care,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care.